Hi, and welcome to Parting the Clouds. My name is Annette Hegner, and we shed the light on the darkness of emotional bondage through real life testimonials. Okay. Hello, everyone. Have we got a story for you today? My guest is Ashley Nadine, and she has an incredible testimony of how God brought her through the other side of a traumatic story in her life, and how she's using that now to help others and go around and speak and just be a light for the Lord. So, Ashley Nadine is a business owner, an author, a life coach, a motivational speaker located in Brea, California, where she also has her bridal shop, Ashley Nadine Bridal. Ashley has a very powerful and inspiring testimony about escaping a life of human trafficking. She was named Woman of the Year by Deluxe Version magazine and on the cover of Amare magazine alongside Oscar de la Hoya as a hero of change, as well as in the most influential of LA Style magazine. So I am so honored to have you here and to hear how this happened, and how you got to the other side and where God has you now. So if you could just begin with your childhood, I think it's super important for people to understand that not everybody has a rough life and gets pulled into trafficking. There's other things that can happen and lead innocent little girls astray. And so please share.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Anna, thank you for having me on. It really is a privilege. And you're such a beautiful soul, a beautiful light, very easy to talk to. So you're definitely in your gift.
You.
But I love that you say that, because the truth is that, as we were talking earlier, it's not just like a lot of women and children are just taken off the streets and kidnapped, although that does happen. There's a different form of trafficking. We call it like the Romeo pimps and things like that. And so when I grew up, my parents have actually a beautiful marriage. Even to this day, it's like, I think they say they can count on one hand how many times they've actually fought. Like they're so just amazing, really, to look at. Like I just feel like they're so in love still. They have so much fun. Like life is so, like, they just are always doing things together. My dad was an extremely working man, and my mom actually did quit her job to stay home and raise my brother, and I have a brother. We're 18 months apart, so we're pretty close in age. But I remember them being at home. Like we did the family dinners. We had Sunday fun day where we would have something we would do together all as a family on Sunday. My dad worked a lot, but I mean, it's not like I didn't never see him, So the home was pretty well rounded. And because of that, I was actually a pretty confident kid. Like I was in a lot of sports. I was in cheerleading, tap dance. Like I was in tap dancing, I think, when I was 6 years old. And then 7, 8, I got into cheerleading. And I mean, I was like the homecoming princess and all of that. Like, so I was a very confident kid going even into high school, which I think prepared me even for high school, because I was on the high school cheerleading squad as well. And I joined all kinds of clubs. I started my own dance team in high school, which is like, and so when I look back and think about all of these things, I'm like, wow, this really can honestly, truly happen to anybody. Like it really can. And for me, what happened was I was 14 when this happened, but I spent the night at a girlfriend's house, and my parents trusted me at this time because I was a good kid. I did get good grades. Extracurricular activities and all that. And so I remember them being a little hesitant because, it's like, okay, well, who is she? Was her mom going to be home? Her mom was home. She was a single mom. She slept upstairs though. And my friend had a room downstairs. So
Okay.
already it's
Yeah.
a recipe for disaster for kids, right? So she tells me that day, she's like, oh my gosh, there's this house party. It's around the corner. Like we could sneak out. Nobody will know. Like we'll be fine. We'll just go out the back door, and we jump the fence, So we get to this house party, and it was loud. I remember like all the cars and everything. But what was really weird, and this is actually just a memory that has recently been coming back to me, So if I get a little emotional or whatever, just I'll keep going. But
okay.
it's so weird because it comes to me in segments as I get healing, you know. But when I showed up to this house party, I remember her leaving me. Like,
The friend left you.
yeah.
Okay.
And now I'm like, I wonder if she like set me up. Like I still, like I said, it's a little bit kind of sketchy still, but I do remember her bringing me in and then taking off like upstairs with somebody. And so that's when I was approached by, you know, somebody older than I was. And so anyway, so there's times where I really wonder. And the more I think about it, the more I'd got to say she probably did have something to do with that setup just a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I said is because this group all knew each other. So, you know, so I'm just, like I said, I'm just kind of confessing this as this is like the first time I'm really going into detail about this particular
So can I ask you a question about the friend though? Because
Sure.
this is super important to me as a mom of daughters, because I like have a little bit of discernment when I see some of these kids, and there's just something about them that you could tell they're a little off, or maybe, you know, they're a little more naughty than the average.
Absolutely.
Was she like that?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
She would want to go hitchhiking, and she was, you know, the alcohol and all of that. She definitely was on that path of, you know, just I don't want to say destruction, but I mean, she was always trying or doing things. And I remember just feeling so uncomfortable. But for the sake of peer pressure or whatever, it was like I just rolled with her. And she was older than I was, but she was in the same grade. So she probably got held back, you know. So she definitely was one of those kids that was out there and just wild and, you know.
Yeah, and without a father figure, you said she had a single mom, so that makes it easier for her to get away with more things. So it's just something I like to to know about my own daughter's
That's
friends,
a great question though. Exactly. Yeah, cuz you know, my daughter too, she's 16 now. So it's close to that age, you know, where I met all those people and stuff and when that happened to me. So I totally understand. Okay. Yeah. So shortly after that I was approached by a man older than me, and next thing you know, he's like, hey, like, come in the room with me, you know, I want to talk to you, and you're so beautiful. And at this point I'm like, I'm alone, you know, my friend is who knows where. You know, and so I thought, why not, and I'll just go and, you know, maybe talk to him or whatever. And
you weren't scared at all?
I was. I was, but more so because I wasn't used to these kinds of environments. Like, this wasn't a typical thing for me. Like, it was like, this was kind of like one of my first house parties, and, you know, sneaking out, and I didn't do that before. So I was a good kid. So it was like, whoa, like, this is, you know, exciting. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't know. So when we got into the room though alone is when I feel like he just laid it on. Like, it was just like, oh my gosh, like, you are just like so perfect for me. And you're just, you know, it was like, so he was like serenading, you know. It was just like, and as I mean, I was a little girl still. I mean, I grew up on Disney movies, which I don't know anybody who doesn't like Disney. You know, I was just thinking, it's my Prince Charming. This has got to be, you know, my parents are together. Like, it's not like they dated a whole bunch of people. There was just one person they met in their teens, you know? So I thought, man, you know, and so, he just told me everything just that I wanted to hear as a young girl. And it wasn't hard, you know, for me to fall into that trap with him and stuff. And, it was probably like a couple days later, he asked to pick me up from my house. And at this point, it was like, it was going to be one of those, like, I have to hide it from my parents. You know, I have to sneak out because I already knew they weren't going to like that at all. Like, I just knew my parents, like, they were like my dad is pretty strict, you know, especially with guys and stuff. So, but he drove a BMW, and I think that was also very enticing and very, if I'm honest, like, you know, as a girl, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, he has, you know, BMW. It's like, it was impressive to me.
Yeah. And how much older was he?
He was like, I want to say 4 years. I'm like, to this day, I'm not exactly sure, but he was 4 years. So obviously he was like 19, you know, and I'm 14 at this time. So he definitely was, to me, was still a man, you know. He was,
Mhm.
I knew he wasn't in high school, like he was older, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah.
It's so scary.
Well, the scariest part was it's when he introduced me to the other men. This was the part that I think was why I allowed so much of that manipulation and control to go on, was because it wasn't just him. There was a whole ring, you know, with like a trafficking ring going on. And that part was when I got really scared, because they at this point knew where my parents lived. They had my ID. Like they, you know, there was unfortunately pictures involved with blackmailing and things like that, where, you know, it's like at this point I'm like, they have so much, you know, on me. And I think more than anything I was like afraid, because like one of the pimps burned one of my friend's houses down. Like he lit her house on fire. You know, another girl I know, so sad, but I mean, she must have been like 13, and he like one time he grabbed her by her underwear and just ripped, you know what I mean? And so I'm witnessing all of these, you know, these things, and it's like I mean, one of them was on his third strike. It just goes to show how intimidating these men were. You know what I mean? They were big. I mean, like intimidating gangster kind of, you know. And so, yeah.
Okay, but after the first time he picked you up, explain how he kind of courted you to get you to that point where he introduced you to the men, because there's a block of time.
There's a block of time, absolutely. Well, like I said, it didn't really take too long, just because I had just assumed that he was my boyfriend. Like it was just, you know, because he would start picking me up from school. Like we would, like I'd ditch and he'd come pick me up, and he would take me we would drive to Hollywood a lot. And he would like point to this one house. This is like where I was like, okay, like he is my husband. Like he would point to this one house, and he'd be like, that house is going to be ours one day. Like it was just one house, and he would take me there over and over and over. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, we know this is going to be ours. Like we're going to have a home together. And that's all I wanted, was a home with somebody. And one of the days after he took me to that home, we were driving back, and that's when we pulled over to a park. And he told me to get out of the car. And that's when he slapped me across the face, and he was like, you're going to be working for me now. And that was it. Like that was where the switch happened so fast that I was just so in love. Like I as a girl, like I was so already into him, that it was like whatever he wanted, I would have, you know, I would have done. And people ask me all the time, like, why didn't you just leave? And it's like, you just don't get it. You don't understand this grooming process. And at that age and stage of life where you're trying to develop and find yourself, and you know, that's such a vulnerable stage, you know. Yeah, just so.
Yeah, I can't even fathom. My son will be 14 next month. And yeah, you are still developing, and you're still so young and impressionable and just easily led astray. And so I just want to like point out to the parents out there, because like Ashley's saying, she had parents that were still married and, you know, a happy household. And you grew up in church, right?
I didn't.
You didn't?
No, I didn't grow up in church. But my parents, they did things like as if they were like a Christian couple. Like the way my mom respects my dad, and she would say that, like, no, I have to respect your father. And the way my dad loved my mom, I don't even think they understand that they're living like Christian principles, you know. Not that they don't have some kind of faith or, you know, believe, but they definitely weren't like, we didn't go to church. We just weren't that family. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I guess my point is, it's like, I know for me, like, because I'm married and we have our kids, and I feel like there's like a safety there, like, because we've raised them to know better. And, you know, you think that they're safe with the morals and the values that you've taught them, but it's not always the case. And so
It's not.
it's like you have to be so careful, especially nowadays with the way that the internet is and social media, and it's super easy
super easy
for them to get just sucked in.
Mm-hmm.
It's like in the ocean, like
Mm-hmm.
that wave that just takes them out. And it's like one day they're right there, and the next, like, you can't even reach them, even though they're right next to you. So
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I will say that the one thing I wish I could have gotten maybe more from my parents is feeling more safe and open to talk about certain things. I think that even though they were present, I just maybe more emotionally available is what I would say. Now that I'm in recovery and therapy and things that I've learned through this process of recovering, I'm realizing how much that emotional availability is so important. And I'm realizing that with my daughter, like stuff that she tells me, I would have never told my mom. Like, I'm like, oh, thank God. Like, she's opening up to me about certain things and she feels safe enough with me to say these things, you know? I think just having that non-judgmental and unconditional love with your kid, you know, even she knows I'm a Christian, she knows I'm a believer, but she knows she can talk to me about, you know, her transgender friends or her gay friends and things like that. And I'm not going to be like, you can't, you know what I mean? I listen, because with children, you have to listen. You can't just come at them and be like, that's wrong. That's not what the Bible said. Like, that's not the way, that's not love.
yeah.
And so, even with those topics and things that I see these children in school are they deal with this on a daily basis. On a daily basis, they're being indoctrinated with all kinds of things. But if I'm not able to listen to my own daughter, like, why would she ever receive from me if I'm not willing to be compassionate and understanding and gentle and everything with her? And so that's something that I've learned with my own daughter, and see the difference in the age and how she feels comfortable talking to me versus how I felt with my parents, if that makes sense. I think that's the one missing link.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So pick up from when they started to like bring the other men around, and then what happened from that point?
Yeah, so once I was introduced to, there was two men right away, and these are older men. I'm not talking even, they're like men, like grown men. One of them looked like this like R&B celebrity, and he could sing really well. Well, what I found out, and this was after everything happened, was he actually had a fake ID and he was attending high school to recruit girls. Wow. How crazy is that, right? Like, he was actually there just to recruit girls to start up their, like, whatever they, you know, their trafficking ring or whatever. And so we're like, how the heck did this guy get into this high school? Because people would be like, he looks so old. Like, how is he a high school kid? You know, he said he was a senior coming from like another, I don't know, city or something like that. But come to find out afterwards, he was way older than a high school kid. So we do not know how this guy attended a high school. But anyways, yeah,
that's really scary.
It's really scary. Like, that's on another level of like recruiting and stuff. But once I was introduced to them, I mean, this, like I was saying, the violence was so crazy that, like, I mean, there was times I was just choked for no reason, or like, you know, one of the times he took this big Grey Goose bottle and he hit it over one of my girlfriend's heads. We were living with him, and I jumped on his back and it like try to like save her, basically, because I thought he's gonna kill her. Like, there's no way she's gonna live through this, you know? And so it was just the violence, and just, it was like, we just knew that, like, this was our lives. Like, we live one way, and then we, you know, like in the beginning, it was like I still lived with my parents, but then I ended up moving in with them because it was in that transitional phase of like, all right, I'm moving out. I'm going to move in with these guys, you know? And at that point I had it was like, it was scary. It just was like, just God, please let me just survive this day, you know? But
So
anyway.
did your parents have any clue as to what was going on? Because this started at 14, but it happened over a span of years. So at what point did they start to realize there's a problem?
Oh, right away they were like, this guy is bad news, Ashley. Like, please, like, they tried so hard to like lock me in the house. Like, they did not want me to leave at all. Like, my mom freaked out. She was crying. I mean, it was just this, it was so sad. It really was. But I was so out of control at that point that there was nothing they could do to stop me. Like, I mean, I thought I was in love. You know what I mean? There's just, it was like, so I packed all of my stuff and I moved in with them and two of the pimps there. And yeah, one time the police actually had to call my parents because I was a minor, like over there living there, and they had to call them because somebody called the cops with this big incident that happened. And I just remember my mom crying, like, Ashley, please just come home. Like, you know, and it was just like, ugh, like, you know, I put them through so much. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So tell us about after that, when that started and then the violence. So you were afraid, obviously. So what happens to a girl when she knows, you know, she doesn't want to be involved in that, but just the fear takes over? And how do they groom you to just like continue to keep coming back?
I think it was just the feeling of thinking like I'm going to be loved, you know, that I'm going to have what I wanted. But then when I started getting broken down mentally and, you know, the name calling and you're not worth this and you're this and, you know, the tearing down, I think just left me feeling so worthless. And just at that point, it was like, well, who cares? Like, I'm not worth anything anyway. I might as well, this is like as good as it gets. This is like the best it's going to be, you know?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that like rings true even for like relationships with boyfriends and girlfriends, just like, and they stay, even if it's like, you know, the same age and they're in a consenting relationship. But it's always so interesting to try to pinpoint like what makes it be that way, though. Is it because you're really looking for that love and that connection and they say that's what they're going to give you? Because, you know, actions speak louder than words.
Right. Yeah. Well, as a child, you don't know that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I didn't, at least. I didn't. Now it's like I'm an adult and I can be like, oh, wait, hold on. Your actions are not lining up with your words. There's a red flag here. But at that age, I didn't know any better. You know, no one, it's not like anybody taught me like, hey, you know, if somebody says something and they don't do that, then there's probably, you know, an issue with their character or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like no one had taught me that. So I just assumed, you know, that people were good and that they meant what they said. And so it was just very easy for me to believe that that was, you know, going to be it. And by the time the switch happened, I was just so caught up. It was like, okay, you know, if this is what he wants me to do, like he'd ask me to do crazy things and I'd be like, I just love him. I'll just do, okay, I'll do it. Like,
wow. How long from the time that you met him until the time that he flipped the switch? Was it just months?
It was months. Yeah. It was months. And the part of the story too, was that even though he was a young teen, the older men were also grooming him at the time. So, and I looking back now, I see that I was like, oh my gosh, like no wonder that situation, you know, it makes sense now. So the older guys were like having him do the dirty work, if that makes sense, because what I like, the older one, I'm not gonna say his name, but he was the one on his third strike. So one more thing and he was in jail forever, right? Like he was hiring these two guys to do whatever, you know, to do all the dirty stuff. So but the point is that I could tell that he was being groomed in a sense too, to do that, because then he started trying to tell me how to do it. Like, you know, well, this is what you look for. You look for the girls that, you know, don't really, they look down at the floor. They're not very confident. Like he would tell me, like, it was so crazy. Like he would tell me how to recruit.
Wow, that's interesting.
And then one time we went to a nightclub, and this was when I was older. we went to a nightclub and he was like, yeah, like you can go and like, you know, that girl right there. And he'd like point one out. And I'm like, so there's just so much behind the whole grooming that, you know, goes into it. But I think they look for certain weaknesses in girls, I think, because yeah, I just wanted to be loved so bad, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So sad.
It is.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us about the part where you went and met the friend for lunch. So what happened to lead you to that, and then how you ended up kind of sharing finally to somebody what was really going on?
Oh, I love this part. So I had a friend in high school named Amanda, and anytime I went over to her house, she had the most loving family, and they were Christians. And I knew they love, you know, I knew they had a certain love. I didn't know it was a religion. I didn't understand it was a relationship with God at the time. I just knew it was love. They just were so loving with me, even though I was a hot mess child. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, just come and I just, she was just so non-judgmental, and just, I felt so safe with her that when I found out I was pregnant with my daughter, that was the catalyst to the change. Was I met up with Amanda and I told myself, I'm going to just confess all of this to somebody, like, and she's the one I'm going to tell. So we met up for lunch and we sat outside on this little bench area, and she looked at me and I just said, you know, I'm living this double life, and I told her, I was like, I'm being controlled by these three guys, and I'm a stripper at a dance club, and they take my money, and this is what, what my life is. And I was like, but I'm pregnant right now, and you know, he's asking me to like abort the baby and stuff. And I was like, but I I don't know what to do. I don't know if I should. Like, I'm conflicted right now, and I just confessed everything. And she broke down like crying, like hysterically crying. And I was like, dude, what is wrong with this chick? Like, she's a freaking weirdo, right? So she's like crying and she's like, I just feel the love of God for you. And I was like, wait, what? Like, what are you talking about? And she was like, Ashley, she was like, there's a God that loves you and his name is Jesus. And she said, if you keep your baby, she was like, he's going to provide for you and he's going to protect you.
Oh.
And I cussed her out. Like, I was like, dude, don't even come at me with this religious crap. Like, I was so wild, And so that night, I was driving to work, driving to the strip club, and this Kanye West song came on. And it was like, Jesus walks, God show me the way, because the devil's trying to break me down. And I was like, Jesus. And I remembered the name. And I was like, Jesus. I said, that's the same Jesus that she was just telling me about. Because I literally, like, I think my grandma maybe carried around a baby Jesus, but I didn't know who Jesus was. Like, I'm telling, this was like the first time I'm actually hearing about who is Jesus, right? So Amanda told me about Jesus and told me he would provide for me and protect me. And then I'm driving the same night, driving to the strip club. This song comes on about Jesus. And I'm like, now you like my antennas are up. Like, wait a second, this is the same name she just said. So then I go into the strip club that night, and I'm putting my lingerie on, like I'm getting ready to go work the floor. And so I'm like putting my garter belt on, and like I go, then in the back there's a big mirror that all the girls are back there, and I looked down and I looked up to like look at myself one last time. And that's when I saw and I felt God's presence right there. And like, I didn't see a face, but I felt a presence, and it was so like a father, a holiness, a gentleness, a love, all in one moment. Like, such a supernatural thing that to this day, like, I'm still changed because of that moment. Like, like a father's encounter in the ugliest place, right? The darkest, deepest, like who would ever want to chase someone like me down in a strip club dressing room, you know? And it's like I'm sitting there and I know that I'm having an encounter, you know, with God. Like I know that. And I just suddenly, like, I couldn't be in there. I could not be in the back of this place anymore. Like I was like, I don't care if like they kill me, like, you know, I don't care if they chase me. Thank you. I was like, I don't care. I told myself, like, even if I lose my life, like I'm leaving this place. And so I got in my car and I started driving home. And when I got home, there was a book on my dresser called God's Promises for Women. And I'm telling you, I don't know how that book got there. Like there's no rhyme or like there's nobody. Why would that book be in my, there's no reason why that book was there. Like I don't know how. Not that there's no reason. There's a reason it was there. I don't know how it got there. Is the miracle, the miraculous part. So I'm like, this is crazy. This is a whole, I felt God was at this point, I'm like, God is chasing me. Like I know he's chasing me down. So I opened up that book and I was like, okay, like, well, you know, and I opened up and there was one verse on the page and it said, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you'll find. Knock and I'll open up the door. And so, and right there in my room, no preacher, no choir, no one, it's just me and God. Like I said, God, if you're real, then I feel you chasing me and I need you to show me that you're real. And that's when I felt the Holy Spirit just come into my body. And I've never been the same since that day.
Oh my gosh. How old were you at that point?
I was 19. 19, pregnant at 19. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep. So even my daughter Layla, I believe is a miracle because I was baptized in the Holy Spirit while she was in my womb. You know, so I know that God has a plan for even Layla, and I'm yet to see that unfold. But there's no way that I could have a spiritual encounter and rebirthing with the birth of, you know, a child inside me and it not affect my fruit, you know, and my legacy. There's no way. And I'm claiming that over Layla's life. And I will see that, you know, I believe that I will see that. So
yeah. I believe it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's beautiful.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So you have that encounter with God, and then what happened? How did you get out from that point?
The FBI got involved. Yeah. You know, it's a whole story. Yeah. That's, I was so grateful because, one of the girls that was a minor, something happened with her. She was in the hospital. I think they said her body was broken. And I want to say like, it was like 20 something places or 20 different bones in her body were broken. It was crazy. Like, I don't know if she survived. I want to say she did. But because of that reason, the FBI got involved because the parents got involved and they started to uncover all of this stuff. And this is all at the same time that I'm having an encounter with God, you know, that's happening. And like my friend said, God will provide and he'll protect. And so it was just immediately after that, the FBI just got involved and they started interrogating them and just, you know, and wow. So 2 of the men are in jail. One of them is not, but you know, the point is that God protected Layla and I both. And I didn't have to worry about that because I used to worry about that all the time. Like, what's going to happen? Are they going to come after me or whatever? But no, like they got busted. That was just it. That was it. Got arrested. They just got arrested. And yeah. And I haven't seen, heard nothing, like just, that's it.
That's a miracle. It's a miracle. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
You didn't tell me that part before.
I know, because when you say FBI, it's like people are like, oh my gosh. And then they go into the whole, like, you know, but the truth is that, they didn't interrogate me. They did more so, the people I was affiliated with. But at that point, I just kind of knew that I'm like, oh, they're about to get caught. Like, there's no way that they couldn't, because there was too much out there,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So then you have Layla. And then what did your life look like after that?
Very humbling. So I started working at a car wash, just started working at a car wash. I left that lifestyle and I started working at a car wash. And one day I looked at my friend and I said, let's move to Vegas. And she's like, really? And I was like, yeah, let's just go. I want to get out of here. I want to get out of this town. I want to forget it all. And she's like, okay. So we packed up and we moved to Las Vegas and I just started a whole new life. I went to college. I went to UNLV, started going to college, and I worked many jobs. I worked at Hilton, great job actually. Got some benefits, and things like that. And I just lived a really normal life, but I dived into church. Church was like, I needed to go to church. Like, church was everything. Like, it was just the place that I found joy and peace and love and just, I think, everything that I've been looking for through all of that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, started living a normal life, and actually I moved in with my friend Amanda, the one who introduced me to Christ.
Oh,
that
my
was so awesome. And so
gosh.
she
Wow.
discipled me. She would read her word and she'd be reading her Bible, and I'd be like, one day I'm gonna know that much scripture. Like, she was just so she was just so awesome. And I remember looking at her like, gosh, I wish I could be like her, because she was just so devoted to God. And I just was in this transition of trying to let go of the old Ashley, which I'm still trying to let go of, and she just seemed to have got it together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just those people that are just like, man, I want to be like you when I grow up. Like, she really had it going on. So.
Okay. So from there, what happened in between then and then you getting this bridal shop? Because that's a big jump there.
So in Vegas, I actually, I was sleeping one night and I was working at Hilton at the time, and I was doing very well actually. Like I was actually in a sales career, and my sales were amazing. People used to ask me, how the heck are you doing this? Because I was the youngest salesperson and I was just dominating. I was just great numbers, right? Anyways, but God woke me up one night and said, you're going to be a fashion consultant. And I was like, no way. Like, really? Like, I had to look it up.
Him to say.
It was so weird. It was so specific, right? So I looked up what a fashion consultant was, because I was like, I didn't even know these things existed. Like, what do you mean fashion consultant? Like, that sounds so fancy. So I looked it up, and I ended up getting led to BB, which is a clothing store, right? And when I was working at BB, and I knew it was God, because he just led me just the whole time. I ended up I ended up meeting America's Next Top Model, Krista White, at the time. And she had won Cycle 14. So her and I just connected, and she was like, I just love everything about you. I love the way you dress and So I ended up starting to work with her as like a personal stylist. And I just started styling her photo shoots. And like, it was just that one encounter with her.
Interesting.
It was. It was so crazy.
Not your normal opportunity. So.
It's not, because people spend their whole lives, in fashion styling and going to school,
Yeah. I went to the Fashion Institute.
There you go.
LA.
You see?
And I don't work in fashion at all.
You see? Yeah. And not me. And I just loved it, but I've never wanted to pursue a career in it. So,
yeah.
So, when God does something, it's so much better, right? Like, I'm thinking I'm just going to work at a retail store in my late 20s. Like, oh, this was it was very humbling. I'm telling you, the whole experience was a humbling thing. But when he was ready to bless me and ready to do it, it was phenomenal, And so, I was just at these, like, all of a sudden I was at like Fashion Week, and I'm at front row, and I'm sitting, and I'm like, wait a second, like, what just happened? Like, my whole life just like went from like 0 to 100 really quick. So now I'm like at front week at fashion shows, and fashion week, and I'm styling and I'm talking to designers, and like I'm making all these connections with people. And I started meeting a lot of celebrities, like random. Like it was just like God had this thing with celebrities with me, and it didn't matter. I would be at like a tire shop and I would meet a celebrity. It was so crazy. I was like, God, what is this?
Were you still in Vegas?
I was.
Okay.
I was still in Vegas. But it was getting to the point where people were like, how the heck are you meeting all these people? And I was like, it's just a God thing. Like, I'm trying to tell you, it's just, I met Michael Phelps and his girlfriend at the time. He's married now, but at the time he was dating a Victoria's Secret model, and I styled her. And it was just so crazy how God just began to just move. Anyway, so after all of that, God woke me up again and says, I'm calling you to Hollywood. And I'm like, what? And I'm thinking like actual the city Hollywood, but now I see what he's talking about. And when God says something, it doesn't matter how hard you try to fight it, right? Or, my life just fell apart again. Like it was like, I don't even know, because I was like getting awarded for like fashion stylist of the year, and all of a sudden it was like my house was falling apart and I couldn't keep it together. But it was because he had a plan for me to come to California, and there was nothing I could do. I think I had reached my plateau of whatever I was supposed to do in Vegas at that time, and he called me to California. And so, humbling again, here we are again, being humbled. So now I'm at home with my parents in the place that I was trafficked. And I'm like, this freaking sucks. I hated my life at the time. I was like, God, why are you bringing me back here? Like, I don't want to be in this place. Like everything was triggering me. I was freaking a hot mess again, And that's when I got into recovery. I got into these recovery groups. I got into Celebrate Recovery. And I was running a non-for-profit, just full ministry. All I was doing was just full-time ministry. And I wanted to throw a fashion show to raise awareness for human trafficking, because I had my non-for-profit. It was to raise awareness for human trafficking. That was like the cause and behind it. And so I'd use fashion, and in a weird, crazy way, I would ask girls that were in the sex trade. So I knew they were like prostitutes or, to be models for me. I'd ask them to model for me. This is a paid gig. You know what? Come model for me. Modeled it at my fashion show. Never said it was a ministry event. It was just a fashion show.
Wow.
Yeah, we used to have pimps waiting outside sometimes. Yeah, it was really, really interesting. So I'd have these girls come model for me that I knew were in the sex industry. And then I'd have women like myself share their testimonies of how they got out. So it was a very unique way of ministering, using fashion and reaching the person where they're at, And then we'd have like different like recovery homes there, like people who, if you needed help, if they wanted to get out, like they could right there, like at this place, like you just have to go here, we'll protect you. Like it was like a pretty strategic thing. So in order to do that, I'd have to find sponsors or find, designers that would want to partner with me in my non-for-profit to be a part of the cause. I remember seeing this like beautiful bridal shop in the corner by the post office when I took my little t-shirts. I'd take my $25 t-shirts to the post office, because that's all the money I had. And so I'd take my little t-shirts, my ministry t-shirts. And as I was doing that, I saw the shop in the corner, and I was like, oh my gosh, those dresses are so beautiful. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to ask if they would be a part of my fashion show. So I go in there, and there's this elderly woman. She's about 75. Her name was Brea. And I would sit with her and I would talk to her, and I just liked her. Do you ever like talking to old folks? Like, I don't know, it's something about them. Like you just learn from them,
Yes.
Yeah. So I would sit with her, and I just loved being around her. She's been in the bridal industry since 1983. That's before I was born. So there was so much to learn from her. with just wisdom, but also in fashion. Like I love the OG people. Like I will sit with, like, I don't care if you're 100, if you know how to sew, like, I just want to be, you know what I mean? I just love that. I'm just like, oh my gosh. So I just really took a liking to her. I don't know if she did with me, but I did to her, and I just wanted to sit with her. And so she wasn't on the internet. I'm like, Maria, you don't have a website. Like, what are you doing? Like, cause you know, you now time, like she was so used to doing business back in the day. It's like things have changed. So I actually tried to help her. Long story short, she becomes my title sponsor for my fashion show. And Annette, I was just grateful she was even a part of it. I was just grateful that I can't believe these dresses are about to be in my fashion show because they were just so beautiful. But like I said earlier, when it's God, it's better. It's Ephesians 3:20. It's God is able to do more than you dare to dream or imagine. So I would say it was like a week or something after my fashion show event. She calls me and she's like, Ashley, can you come in? I want to talk to you. In my spirit, I knew it was something good. Like, I didn't know what it was. I thought she might have maybe wanted to hire me for marketing or something. And at this point, because I was just living at home with my mom and dad again, that I was just like, I just need a job. Like, I just want to work, you know, I just want to do something. And so I thought it was going to be something like that. And she sat me down and she's like, you know, I don't know anybody better to leave my legacy to. She was like, you're just such an amazing person. And I was like, wait, what? And she was like, would you want to like buy my bridal shop for me? She was like, my mom is sick and I need to move. And, you know, and she's like, but she was like hesitant to let go of everything she had worked for. Yeah. I can tell. But she said that she's like, you know, I have nieces and I have all these people in my family. She's like, but for some reason, she's like, I just feel like it's supposed to be you. Oh my gosh. So my family ended up being my investors, you know, to buy the business originally, but she changed my life. Like literally. I mean, cause you're talking, that was almost 6 years ago, Annette. I've been a bit, and I'm in Orange County, honey, and I'm doing quite all right. I just got to say that, you know, and I mean, I'm a girl from the hood, you know what I mean? Like I didn't grow up let's be honest, I didn't grow up I was surrounded by pimps. Come on, like, you know, and so I walk around my block at night and I'm like, thank you, Jesus. Like I can walk around the block and not get shot. You know, it's like, to me, that's a blessing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a blessing.
It's a big blessing.
It's huge. And to think my daughter's going to a safe school and she's okay. And, you know, not that it, you know, but wow, you know? Yeah. Just wow. Sometimes I sit in my shop and I just cry and I'm like, in happy tears though. I'm like, wow.
That is amazing.
And how prophetic, you know, because it's like, sometimes I still see myself as that stripper prostitute girl, you know, and it's like, not God though. Yeah. Like God sees me something so much better, you know, like when I can't see it in myself, he still shows me. He's like, look at this. You're like surrounded by brides and wedding dresses and like, you know, yeah, so amazing. Like to think he sees you as something so much better than you see yourself.
That's incredible, honestly. Like trying to not cry myself. So
yeah.
Wow. So here you are 6 years later. And what are you doing now? You're going around speaking, sharing your story. Tell us a little bit about that before we close.
Absolutely. So I started to share my testimony and I went to this really cool radio show and I met this awesome host, you know, he's hosting. And 8 months after I was on the show, he calls me up and he's like, hey, I want to take you out on a date. And I'm like, wait, what? He was so forward and so like, and we're engaged. So it's like, you know, my life has just dramatically changed, like so much. And I have a fiance now. I go speaking and I do share. And I love that I share in different places because I go from like recovery homes to like, you know, hoity-toity, like, you know, places that even intimidate me because I'm like, oh my gosh, like, are they going to receive what I have to say? But fortunately, just recently I found out that they are, because when it comes from somebody who's had a good home, and it can happen to anybody, I think it becomes more common and relatable than just like, oh, I was snatched up off the street and kidnapped. You know what I mean? Like, the reality is that this can happen to your child. This can happen to your grandchild. This can happen to your neighbor. It can happen because it happened to me.
Yeah.
So when I speak at these places, whether it be, like I said, a recovery home, which reminds me of where I've come from, when I see these women and they're just in the beginning stages and just trying not to go back to their pimps, or like trying to just not use, or just trying to make it through the day. It reminds me of like, I used to be there.
Yeah.
And then the other times that I go to the other places, I'm like, man, like, these people need to hear what I have to say, because, it's bringing awareness.
Yeah.
So,
and God's love to them, and glory to him.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because that's a big part of my story I can't get away from. Like, no matter if I go into a secular place, like, Jesus that name is going to be known. You know what I mean? Like, because I had an encounter, and that's what changed my life. It was God, and it was his love and his presence and his everything. His mercy is why I have what I have. It's the redemption and the restoration. It's that part, that to me is God. Like, he's not done yet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's more. There's always more. We go from glory to glory and faith to faith. There's always more with God. And I think that hope, you know what I mean, until we reach the end of time and we go to be with him, it's like, there's always more. I don't care how old you are. It is never too late. And I just want to say this last thing. When God told me I'm called to Hollywood, do you want to know that next week I'm going to be in a Bank of America commercial? And I'm so excited because I'm not an actress, but God is so amazing that I was basically like discovered like by this producer. Like, she asked me to do a casting call because she wanted to rent my boutique out for their commercial. And then when she saw me in the video, she goes, Ashley, she's like, have you ever thought about acting? And I was like, no, like, not even. And she's like, can you just do a quick casting call? And I'm like, okay, what do I do? I've never done a casting call before. Like, she's like, just say your name, your age, and that you want to play the boutique owner in the commercial. I'm like, really?
You're like, I am the boutique owner.
Exactly. So
I got this.
I did it. Yeah. And so, do you know that next week, their Bank of America, a Fortune 500 company, is coming to my little shop, my little boutique? You see what I'm saying? Like, there's always more with God. It's always, it blows my mind.
That.
Anyways, that was just my last little.
Well, that's incredible.
Thank you.
Well, I can't wait to see what he is going to do next beyond that, because now we'll be following you. And if you can tell the listeners how they can find you, and maybe your Instagram handle, or email, or website, whatever you want.
Absolutely. So I go by Ashley Nadine now. And then my email is ashleynadine1@gmail.com.
Okay.
And then I also have ashleynadine.com. So it's like, there's so many different avenues, you can find me on. But yeah.
Well, that is amazing. So anybody looking for a wedding dress in Orange County, please visit.
That's right.
Ashley Nadine's shop. And I just thank you for being here and being vulnerable and sharing your story, because that is an incredible testimony, and it will help so many people. So thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for doing what you do, because without you, I wouldn't be here. So you are welcome. All right. So anyway, thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you all for listening and for joining us today. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you next time.